Welcome into the FiredUP Network. It's sports wrap for what was a big week, and definitely a week that saw some teams pull away a little bit, separate themselves. The weekend personified that with the final game of the weekend, the Sunday night football game,
Yeah.
where the Chargers started dominating and then held on. Gerald Bentley here, joined by Alex Campbell, watching the Fired Up Network. You can see us on Watchi TV as well.
Ooh.
But the best place to watch us is that TrueTVPlus app. Download that wherever you get your apps. And you can also see us on sports.tv. Alex, you talked about it during preseason that Jesse Minter, former defensive coordinator of the University of Michigan, is going to be a name you're going to want to be familiar with. And man, did he get the praise last night on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, he's just, he's one of these young defensive minds. We saw the NFL, I would say, maybe 10 years ago, start to drift towards young offensive minds and who can be creative and dynamic with that skill set. Mentor is definitely that guy on the defensive side. He's part of the reason that Michigan won that national championship, that the defense was so elite. Because he has the ability to really set up a defense that brings pressure from multiple areas, and there's no predictability because the look stays the same, and that's really the key. The look stays the same, and the pressure comes from different areas, and you've seen that. Really, the Chargers have just gotten better and better at exactly that all season long.
Yeah, and the Bengals came out just horrible in the first half, but then the second half, they played like a team that is what they were, backed into a corner, playing for your season, and really looked like they were going to take that game and win it, but just not quite enough. And another trend that was exposed in this game that we've seen all year and have been talking about, the team that made the commitment to establish the run, kind of control the ball, and not just stand back there and gun passes all game, is the one that ended up being in the better position. Joe Burrow, 28 of 50, 356 yards, 3 TDs. And the game came down to, a couple of drops on hard to catch balls, but still a ball that T. Higgins should catch, a ball that Jamar Chase should catch. And that made the game. Whereas Justin Herbert, 17 of 36 for 297, his big pass to Ladd McConkey iced the game. And even though the run, J.K. Dobbins didn't dominate the game by any means, but kept the old line, right? You keep the defense honest. You set up the play action. I mean, it looked awfully familiar. If we put another J there, he really did a very good impression of J.J. McCarthy. You're really seeing J.J. Herbert this year.
Exactly. And honestly, when this game really, took off in the second half, I would say Herbert actually threw the ball more than that coaching staff wanted him to. I mean, he chucked it 36 times, didn't throw any picks. Neither quarterback did, but that's probably the benchmark is a little too high. Like, they really want to be under 20 attempts per game. And you know what I mean? That is where that offense will tick and keep humming. But you're right. Like, they could have also leaned on Dobbins harder. I mean, when you look at, this is the reason they went out and acquired Gus Edwards, so that he could spill that with Dobbins. Because let's be honest, Dobbins has a bit of an injury history, and you saw that in this game where, I mean, Herbert had 5 carries for 65 yards on scrambles. Dobbins ran the ball 11 times. Gus carried it 6 times. Hassan Haskins got in there for a couple carries. They really mix it up. And again, you're exactly right. This is almost looks quintessential to what we saw last year at the University of Michigan. I mean, there's a reason we keep mentioning it, because it really, this is just, it's amazing because it's a formula that Jim Harbaugh, and really now by extension of him, Jesse Minter, and you can even go a step further and say Will McDonald in Seattle, have essentially followed to success. Now, I mean, Seattle's struggling a little bit, but juxtapose that here where you have a more complete, Harbaugh type staff than you do there in Seattle, and look at the success they're having. I mean, this team, like, I thought they'd be good. You thought they'd be good, but they're sitting at 7-3 right now. I mean, they're a legitimate playoff team.
Oh, I think they'll make the playoffs. We broke it down last week on Timeout. They do have their toughest stretch of the season coming up, but I think they're basically guaranteed at this point to get to 10 wins. Because I was saying last week, they're guaranteed 9, and I had the Bengals winning this game because historically, if you're looking at betting trends, the team that really needs to win most usually wins. The
Especially
Bengals
when they
needed
have a
that
stud at
win
quarterback.
because they're cooked.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think
That
10-7 is the minimum to get into the playoffs. They need to win out the season now.
And that unpreparedness that they came into the season with, was just too much to overcome. This looks so much like some of the early years of Josh Allen, where the Bills were just putting too much on his shoulders down the stretch to make plays. They're doing the same thing with Burrow. They're putting it's like we just talked about with Herbert. He's most successful when he's under that 20-25 passes. They need to get Burrow to that range. That is what's winning in the NFL right now. You kind of saw the wheels come off the Falcons yesterday for a lot of the same reason. You know what I mean? You just can't. You cannot. This isn't, 3-4 years ago. The defenses are now faster. They figured something out. They're coming at you. The edge rushers are more athletic. Guys that used to play, on offense are now playing on defense. The defenses, I would say, across the NFL are more athletic than the offenses now.
You're seeing it. You're seeing a lot of defenses really stepping up, because a couple of years ago, it was the year of offense. It was explosion. You were seeing 50 points routinely. Most games were over. We saw it start last year that the under won about 65% of the time. That's holding true again this year. And here, the team that has been the best offense in football by a mile, the Baltimore Ravens, they made their personal Lex Luthor, Mike Tomlin, and the Steelers, without the benefit of a touchdown, they win 18-16. And Russell Wilson talked about the win.
Guys, I've got to try to adjust to.
They did a good job. I think that we knew it was going to be a battle back and forth in this game. I knew that it was going to be a tough of will in the end. That's just how these games are. It was huge for us to be able to respond. I think that we reacted, and responded really well on certain things, especially, as the game went on. We kind of started figuring out what they were trying to do, and I think we just stayed the course.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what they did. I mean, it's not the most exciting kind of football, but here, everything we're talking about with Harbaugh, with Minter, with McDonald, Mike Tomlin's been doing that now for years. He hasn't ever had a losing season, 17 consecutive winning seasons. And they're one win away from 18. They're 8-2 now. They're sitting in first place. They got a 2-game spread on the Ravens and a tiebreaker now. Russell Wilson, not great, but, okay. 23 of 36, 205. Threw an interception. But his ability to throw the ball long has opened up Najee Harris to look like a guy who's actually a functioning running back, whereas last year he was getting 1.5, 2 yards a carry because nobody feared Kenny Pickett outside of maybe finding the 1 or 2 long balls a game. So it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers aren't a team where you can put 7 or 8 guys in the box against right now and successfully win the game. It's not that Russell Wilson is like the flamethrower that he was in Seattle. It's that he's still got a little of that magic in him, and you got to respect it because he can take the top off the defense. Now he's not. I mean, he's not reliably going to do it like he did 8 years ago, but he can take the top off the defense and does stretch the field in that way. And with the Steelers, the way that they're set up on defense, they have the highest payroll. Listen, let's be honest. There's a reason they got 2 quarterbacks for free, and they went and got these guys for free. It's because they couldn't afford an actual quarterback salary. They just can't.
Well,
their payroll is the highest.
They swung and missed on a first-round pick.
They swung and missed on a first-round pick, so they've got money tied up in that investment. And they have the highest payroll on defense, and it's not even close. And that's been true for a long time about the Steelers. And so that's why they consistently don't have losing seasons. The defense, it seems, will always, under Tomlin, and I mean, let's be honest, under every Steelers regime we've seen, well, like my entire lifetime, will keep them in these games, and they do it in the most subtle of ways. And if you look at this game against the Ravens, it was almost dead even in the team stats, like dead even. Total yards 329 to 303, passing yards 205 to 181, rushing yards 124 to 122, yards per play. As we know, the Ravens are a little more explosive, 6.1 to 4.1. The key in those games when it's close, and I could say the same thing going back to that Chargers game, is turnovers. It's going to be turnovers every time. They won the turnover battle. They forced 2 fumbles, and that was the game, basically. That number of possessions, you look at also their time of possession, 36 minutes with the ball compared to only 23 minutes with the ball. They did exactly what they needed to do and what every team needs to do. Now, I'm not sure every team can because they don't have the exact same guys on defense as the Steelers do, but that's what every team needs to do to beat Lamar Jackson right there.
Yeah, and it is that recipe that the Steelers have, and they've really had an identity and a character that's carried them for a long, long time. Because here, not only your life, but I'm in my 50s, and the Steelers have only had 3 head coaches in my life. Chuck Noll from before I was born to 1991, Bill Cowher from 92 to 06, and then Mike Tomlin from 07 to today. And you wonder, hey, why do the Steelers have fans across the country? Well, it's because they were the Chiefs and they were the Cowboys before the Cowboys and the Chiefs were the Cowboys and the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Why are Rudy Reyes from FiredUP Network, and probably the first time he's ever been put in a sentence with this person, Glorilla, both big Steelers fans, because they win. Chuck Noll from 69 to 91, 342 games. He was 193 and 148. Bill Cowher, 149 and 90. Mike Tomlin, 173 and 100. That is a combined winning percentage of over 600 going back to 1969. That is just crazy. And
it's a bit of a long-term dynasty, right?
Yeah. And if you go back before that, they were about a 400 team. So they had a 50-year build up to 1969 when they turned it on.
Yeah. And then in a bigger picture, though, that this is the type of team that Lamar Jackson has continually lost to in the playoffs and down the stretch run of seasons. And part of the reason that might give you pause and thinking he'll get to another Super Bowl, a Super Bowl in his life, because herein lies the issue. If you can play really solid run defense and have fast enough linebackers that you can spy him on defense, which is exactly what the Steelers did. They didn't allow him to go crazy in the run game, and they stopped. And they stopped Henry. Now, they didn't stop him, but they slowed him down. He only had 65 yards in this one. If you can do those two things and your offense can consistently run the ball and keep him off the field, you can win those games. And a lot of the playoff teams that he's lost to follow even if they're not built that way, have followed a very similar formula in beating him in those, January, February games. You've just seen it time and again. And I don't know, given his skill set, I don't know how he's going to overcome that. He needs to have the ball for a solid, continuous amount of time. If you beat him in the time of possession, he's at a sharp disadvantage.
Yeah, precision passing has never been his game, and really they're a 2-receiver team. Isaiah Likely and Zay Flowers, if you can lock those guys down and make him throw to tight windows, make the third read, he's never shown he can do that. And it's these kind of smash mouth defensive games that really give him problems. He'll throw the stats up playing against the chum of the league. Right. But what you do against the Titans doesn't really matter against everybody else. I mean, they're the Titans. Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. And it's true about all teams. It's amazing to me that these are the best football players literally in the world. And on any given Sunday, anyone can beat anyone. And that's still true. But the difference between when these, when a team like the Ravens or the Lions or the Chiefs play a quality opponent versus play a non-quality opponent, it's a stark contrast. It's noticeable just by every viewer that's watching on the television.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that Chiefs game too. They take their first loss of the season, and I think we both picked them to lose.
We did.
21-30, the Chiefs lose in a game that was much more important for Buffalo than it was for the Chiefs. The Bills go to 9-2, the Chiefs go to 9-1. And you really saw the same mistakes that the Chiefs have been making and just getting away with that they couldn't get away with this better opponent. Xavier Worthy, once again, forgot that he was playing in the NFL, not the Big 12, and was caught a long pass. I don't know why he was so close to the sideline, but, was kind of celebrating because he dragged his left foot, but your right foot was on the white. What are you doing? That's 2 weeks in a row. He got 1 foot in with wide open, nobody close to him. He was kind of out of balance and right on the sideline. And, those both should have been touchdowns against a lesser opponent. Okay, you can work around that. Against the Buffalo Bills, that was your break play that should have been a touchdown. Instead, it ends up being a non-scoring drive. The Chiefs end up losing 21-30. Late touchdown by the Bills to ice the game. It was a little bit closer than that. But, you just can't make all the mistakes the Chiefs have been making against the high-level team and get away with it every time. Sometimes you can. But, it just wasn't quite enough.
And they got down early. I mean, that was part of it, right? I mean, they were down 16-7 at one point there in the second quarter. And like you said, the Bills, it's just like a quicksand almost. You just can't climb out of that because the offense on the other side of the field, especially with Josh Allen, can move the ball. And it's right there in the stats. I mean, the time of possession, Bills. Rushing yards, Bills. Passing yards, Bills. So it's like when that happens and you're behind, you can look at the stats and say, like, I don't care who's playing. If I looked at these numbers and you told me the Chiefs started the game in the first 2 quarters behind, I could tell you they lost without even looking at the score. Because if you're the team from behind and you don't stand out in any one statistical category and winning the major ones, you're not going to win unless you win the turnover battle, which, by the way, they lost. So, so you add all those things
on the last play of the game, at that point, you got to force something. But
so even if you consider it even and you drop all those other factors, you know what I mean? You're not going to win the game. Like it doesn't, I don't care. You could have Tom Brady or Pat Mahomes or whomever at quarterback, and it's not going to be enough if the other guy on the side of the field is able to outproduce and you're already down. It's really quite simple. And that's exactly what happened. They were already down, and then Allen, in a way, outplayed Mahomes. And so, the Bills didn't even run the ball that well. Honestly, they really didn't. But it was enough. It was enough.
Yeah. The Chiefs' run defense is elite. Let's hear from Josh Allen, and I'll get back to, is the Chiefs' defense elite?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you give the ball back to Pat and that offense, down 6 with the game on the line, I'll tell you what, they like their odds in that situation. So wanting to get 6 or 7 to try to make it a 2-score game, and our defense bowed up there at the end, and a heck of a play by TB.
They did. And the Bills got that score. And in referencing, because there's been a lot of talk, hey, the Chiefs have an elite defense, Steve Spagnuolo getting lots of praise, and they have been very good. Mm-hmm. They're not elite, though. They generally give up scores on the scripted drives to literally everybody. That first drive of the game, they pretty much, you can pretty much write it in. The team's going to score. Then they kind of tighten up because they figure, okay, this is what they're doing. We'll make the adjustments. Where they're missing being elite, look at their percentage of winning pass rush opportunities. It's down significantly from last year. Chris Jones is really the only guy getting consistent pressure, and against an elite quarterback, which Josh Allen obviously is, there was basically 1 or 2 plays where they had a chance of sacking him, and he just ran through the middle. He ran through where the blitz came from. There wasn't a pass rush at all. He also burned him on a few blitzes where Shamari Connor and Trent McDuffie came on the blitz. And what do you do when they blitz and you have time? You throw to where the blitz came from. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty much it. They just didn't get any pass rush. That's why they couldn't get the Bills off the field. That's why you lose the time of possession. And as it turns out, that's why you ended up losing the game. That, along with a couple of little mistakes. And it's not a death knell. I mean, they weren't going to go undefeated. I think they're going to lose 3 games. So not a big deal, but a little concern,
Yeah, because of what, I think you have less concern if, Mahomes pulled a hamstring, you'll be fine in 2 weeks and you lost to the Saints. I think there'd be far less concern, right? Because this happens to be someone who, I think you'd pick any other team in the league other than these 3, right, for this game to be. You don't want it to be the Lions. You don't want it to be the Bills. And because of their history, you don't want it to be the Bengals. If it's anyone else, fine. it's way less impactful. But the fact that it was the Bills, I think does hurt a little bit, because this is a team you're likely going to see in the playoffs if you get to another Super Bowl. And I think that is why it hurts a little bit. Now, the Lions are in the NFC, but again, with the Bengals and the Bills specifically, teams that you will have to go through in the AFC to get to a Super Bowl, most likely it's going to be one of those two. It looks like Burrow's not going to make the playoffs this year, but Allen will. So, you know what I mean? And that's why. If it's any of those three teams, it's there's something more to just that, especially when you've played in a similar way that you've won a lot of the other outcomes and you're playing against the guy and you lose.
Now, they do get 2 weeks to get better, taking on two of the absolute worst teams in the NFL back-to-back. You get the Carolina Panthers and then the Raiders on Black Friday at Arrowhead. Andy Reid knows they need to work a little bit, and he says they're going to learn some from the loss.
Yeah.
Let's hear what Andy had to say right after the game.
Really, the Felix had hurt his hand at the end, but continued to play. Listen, my hat goes off to Sean and the Bills. They did a nice job. They made plays when they needed to. Did a nice job with that. It's a great game to learn from for some of our young guys. Two good teams play each other. The margin between winning and losing is small, man. And so, and that starts with me. We can all learn from it and take something out of this and make us better down the road here. So we'll do that.
Very true. And, in my past experience working in athletic departments at Division I colleges, a lot of coaches across sports, doesn't matter what sport it is, will tell you off the record, just talking to you as a, staff worker, not as media, hey, this is a good loss because these guys weren't listening. Mm-hmm. We were winning too much. A loss is good. Now, when we go to practice on Monday, hey, they'll listen because now they feel immortal. And that does make sense because to a degree, every professional athlete in every sport, by the time you get to be a pro, you've been the best at your game from grade school, junior high, high school, college, at every level, and really probably have known nothing but success personally. Maybe you were on some losing teams in college, but it wasn't you because you were standing out. You were the star. That's why you're in the profession.
That's why I got drafted. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Take a loss. That kind of snapped you back, and it may help break some bad habits like the ones we've seen. You can look at the trends. Giving up the score at the beginning of the game, not getting the pressure, the offensive line being a little bit sloppy because it's not just the left tackle that's giving up rushes to Mahomes. It's everybody. The vaunted top 3 interior linemen in the league, they haven't looked that good. Now they get back Charles Omenihu. They get back Isaiah Pacheco. Xavier Worthy seems to be coming together a little bit, maybe wanting to make a little bit more attention and get noticed nationally for things other than his mom looking like she's 20 years old. And the Chiefs can pull it together, and then they have a couple of challenging games after this 2-week basically virtual bye. Go back to the beginning of our show, and they get Sunday Night Football at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium against Jim Harbaugh and those Los Angeles Chargers.
Yep. In a game that I'm sure Harbaugh already has circled on the calendar, has all his guys emotionally ready for right now. And so Harbaugh is unquestionably one of the best motivators in football. And you can just see it in the way they play. So he's going to have the Chargers ready for that game, and they're getting better every week. And don't forget that in the rear view of this Chiefs schedule, they've had 1-score losses to inferior opponents the previous 3 weeks. So if you count the Chargers among those inferior opponents, I'd hazard a guess that they'll be in the game in the fourth quarter. And that's, it's a crapshoot. It's the NFL. You know what I mean? It's any given Sunday, truly. And these are some of the reasons why. And I think you hit a good point there with the offensive line struggles a little bit, because I think that's really what's resulted in a little bit of the chaotic play from Mahomes. You know what I mean? It's funny. I was talking to my son, and he goes, what do you think the most unlikely but reliable bet this season has been? I said, well, you can't, it's hard to really, depend on it. But I guess if you put like one interception, I'd take over a half interception for Mahomes in every game. And I'd take over 1.5 for Trevor Lawrence in every game. And I think that would probably be the unlikely but dependable bet of the season. It's been true every week.
Interceptions have been up in the league too. Like we're seeing, the defense has made adjustments. Defense is coming back this year.
Yeah, even the one guy that doesn't throw many, Jared Goff, threw like 5 or 6 in one game.
What I mean? Yeah, first time somebody's done that since 2018. The Chiefs do get then another mini bye. They take on the Browns, then finish. Because we're getting close enough now. We could talk about finishing the schedule.
Oh, for sure.
The Texans at home, the Steelers in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day. And wrap it up against an ascending Denver Broncos. That's why I think, 14-3, 13-4 is very, very likely to be the final record for the Chiefs, and not a disappointment as long as they play better in those games. That's not a bad season, but 17-0 was fantasy land. Talking about fantasy land going undefeated, let's swing over to college. I got it behind me. The KU Jayhawks, on the benefit of a highlight play from JD6 that didn't involve him throwing or running, they win 17-13, upset the previously undefeated BYU Cougars. Lance Leipold talking about the win.
Even from the punt recovery, it was the same. I said something to the officiating crew. It's the same crew we had at Illinois when we had the chance for the recovery. That was a muff, and they got the ball back. It ended up being a big play. This one went our way. Able to punch it in. We found a way to get some stops defensively. At times when we had trouble slowing them down, we tightened up a couple different times for some key plays. Able to get the 4th down stop there at the end and found a way to run the clock out.
That was a quality win. Now, KU, not what they wanted. They went into the season talking about, hey, we're the new leaders in the Big 12. We're looking at a national playoff spots. The first year it's the 12-team playoff. We're going to be in contention. We got Jalen Daniels back. He's healthy. We're ready to go. Well, unfortunately, he wasn't healthy. They weren't ready to go. Right. Start the season horrendously. But now, back-to-back weeks, in what could easily have been just a total lost season in Jayhawks teams in the past. Turner Gill, looking at you, man, where they just utterly collapse and lose by 70. That didn't happen. They upset Iowa State last week. They upset BYU this week. They're now favored to win their last 2 games. Well, maybe not favored. They got Colorado. If they can beat Colorado, they go to a bowl game, and they would upset the top 3 teams in the Big 12 back to back to back.
And you could throw that K-State game in there that they only lost by 2, and Daniels played well. He's really been playing. I honestly think Houston was the get-right game for them. Daniels looked – I mean, you could actually even go back to Arizona State to the point where Daniels started to look better. If you look at that Arizona State game, that is where he really turned a corner, and then they dominated Houston. He played really well again against Kansas State. And again, he's just been playing better and better this whole time. This was his highest passer percentage of those 4 games against BYU here. And it was a bit of a rock fight, as you like to say, where it was a lot of running the ball, a lot of hard defense. That's how you get a 17-13 final, And really, the rest of that KU team has responded. They won the turnover battle, and that's why they won the game.
Yeah, key play of the game, the pooch punt, which was a great call.
It was.
And really caught BYU off guard. That's quality coaching. That's a good job by Lance Leipold.
Well, and it's a guy that's been around for a while, because you don't see those anymore. You got to look back to the 90s the last time you saw pooch punts. So
well executed. Something they had to practice. That was well done. Now they get to see if they can stop another guy who's done a good job coaching. Primetime. They win. They pummel Utah. They're in a good position.
Wonderful win. You're talking about a coach that I respect so darn much. These last 2 guys that we faced probably is some of my favorite guys and guys I adore. We got one coming up next week that I truly adore. And he texts me and he calls me from time to time to keep my spirits going, and I do him. But it was a wonderful union before the game. I don't know what the future is for Coach, but tremendous man, tremendous leader, tremendous everything that he touches and everything. I told him I wish I could have half of the career that he's had at Utah. So I don't know what's going to transpire, but that's a good man, a great coach. They fought hard. Team has no quit in them whatsoever. They're physical, aggressive. That's who they are, and they lived up to that. Now, for us,
a lot of praise there for Kyle Winningham, talking about Lance Leipold as well. It was a humble primetime Deion Sanders. He has Colorado in position. They now control their own destiny.
Yeah. Yeah. And the insiders, I think, are talking about Warren Sapp. I really do. He's been the difference on that defense. They tackle different. They hit different. They got a different attitude. Man, does it look like Sapp's attitude just replete in that defense. I mean, they've always been able to score under Prime. They got the athletes to do it. But, man, do they tackle and hit. This is a different team on defense than they have been before. This is what they were missing last year and why they would give up those boat race games where it was, 45-47. They're not doing that anymore because they got more athletes and they're a little faster on defense this year. And I know he's not the D coordinator, but they got the spirit of Warren Sapp there because they are, and especially when it comes to rushing the passer. I mean, he has instilled a confidence in that defensive line that I think has made all the difference for the secondary and ultimately for the rest of the team. And it shows up every single week. And I think that the only reason I bet against Colorado is because I wasn't sure it would show up every single week, but they've gotten better on defense as the season has gone along. So it's amazing. You get a lot of guys talking about how good Colorado's offense is. I'm in love with their defense, in love with what they can do on defense because it's such a huge juxtaposition to what they had last year.
Yeah, and it's going to be a huge game for the Big 12 to determine what happens. Colorado coming to Kansas City, KU playing off campus this year because they're rebuilding their stadium. KU comes in 4-6, 3-4 in the conference. Colorado 8-2, 6-1 in conference. They're only a 3-point favorite, which is surprisingly low.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they expect it to be.
Think Colorado gets it?
I think Colorado gets it. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close one, but I think they get it specifically because they do play that well on defense, and I like their playmakers better than I like Kansas's playmakers right now. I think I would take a healthy Shedeur over a healthy JD6 as well. So, you know what I mean? So I think there you have it. And then, how many plays does Hunter make? It's real amazing to see him just continually go both ways and have as much energy as he does. That's the most remarkable thing about him, I think, is the stamina. I don't think anybody else could do that. I've seen some two-way players. I'm a huge Michigan fan. I saw Charles Woodson go both ways. I saw Jabril Peppers go both ways, but it wasn't like
different eras. Yeah.
It wasn't like this. They were primarily defensive guys that played a few plays per game on offense. They were more gimmicky than anything else. Hunter is a playmaker on both sides of the ball.
And Peppers, to his credit, also played basketball.
Yes,
he's a darn good player.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to one other two more college games quick, and then we'll wrap it up.
Sure.
MU, the Tigers, on the outside looking into the national playoffs. But if you asked MU, they were just right there. All they had to do was win. They didn't. A team that we've been talking about being on the ascent, they got it done in another crazy finish. MU went down a score, came back, had a great explosive play to Luther Burden to take the lead, and then let South Carolina drive down the field, score the game-winning touchdown in about 35 seconds. Granted, it's college football. Every first down, you get a timeout, but still not the defensive effort you were looking for. Coach Beamer, happy about the win.
Good to see the bowl reps in here as well. That's always fun. Appreciate you, everyone. I know I saw quite a few bowl teams or bowl games that were here today, so appreciate y'all being here. First of all, credit to Missouri. This was a top 25 matchup against a team in Missouri that's won 18 out of their last 22 games. That we knew they would come in here and that it would be a war. They're a physical football team with a bunch of really good players. And that's what you saw out there tonight as well. So credit to them. Hats off to Brady Cook. I know a lot of people didn't think he was going to play, and for him to go out there and show the guts that he showed out there tonight, ton of respect for him and whatnot. But what a win for our guys. The resiliency that we showed, the togetherness, the never panic. I mean, just so many moments and plays from that game. I had a bunch of stuff written down, then I got dumped with Gatorade and everything smeared. So I'm going to try and
Gotta like getting the sponsor in there too.
Yeah, I would say I like Beamer a lot. I don't like a lot of coaches. I like Beamer a lot. I do, and I think he's part of the reason they keep getting better, because he's a genuine guy that I think is able to motivate them, and also is an X's and O's nightmare to go against too. And he's got kind of the whole package there. He's great, man. I like Beamer.
Got a lot of his dad's personality too. Very very engaging, happy guy, and they've really pulled it together because they were not expected to be a threat, and it just shows how hard the SEC is, because 9-3 for Missouri, that's a darn good year. There hasn't been many of those.
Yeah.
They get a bad Mississippi State team coming up next, so they should win that one. It's going to be a good bowl game for Missouri, but it's not going to be national playoffs. That's
and for happening. South Carolina, they've got a little chance. I mean, if they win that game, now they've got 2 easy ones followed by a hard one. They finish against Clemson in a classic rivalry game, but a huge opportunity, because you got to imagine that they're going to be close to that bubble area where if they can, Clemson's going to get a boost in the ratings too. So I wouldn't be surprised if Clemson gets up to, at that point, we're talking 3 weeks from now, maybe, and you look at their ACC schedule, maybe Clemson's number 12, maybe Clemson's number 11. I could honestly see it. Yeah. And then you've got a South Carolina team that's probably, if they win those games, probably around 13, 14. That's going to be a huge game for South Carolina, an opportunity to maybe, just maybe, sneak into the playoffs. I think there's an outside chance.
Well, and you, of course, have the 25-step tiebreaker to determine who gets to the SEC championship game.
Which they're going to have to use.
Yep, a team that's still alive and kicking after being written off for dead last week. Kirby Smart wanted to remind people that winning in the SEC is hard.
A team has to go on the road and play in that kind of night environment. It's really hard. It's really tough to play in that, and I thought it impacted them. I'd also like to give credit to Emily Dietz and her staff. They did a tremendous job with the game management in terms of the energy, keeping people engaged. I guess there were some fireworks. I don't know. Somebody told me there was, but that wasn't what I was worried about. But our kids show resiliency. I'm proud of them. Look, it was a week ago, a couple hours that we were dead and gone. People had written us off. It's hard to play in this league week in and week out on the road. We've accumulated a tremendous amount of injuries from the schedule we've had. And it's not going to really get any easier. It's a physical game. But when you play the gauntlet of what we played, it's taking its toll. We had a lot of guys sitting on the sideline tonight that couldn't play, but we also had a lot of guys that stepped up.
I totally agree with him. Totally agree with him. Yeah.
Now, they go in a game that I think a lot of observers thought, okay, here, this is it. This is where Georgia gets their comeuppance. Taking on Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers, who had climbed up into the top 10. Well, bye-bye. 31-17, the final. Now, no offense to Kirby Smart, I do agree with him. Playing on the road in the SEC is really hard.
And what I've always said, night games.
Missouri's in the Big 12, they win.
Yep.
Missouri's in the Big 12, they're the conference champions. They would be the best team in the Big 12. Period. And a sentence, no doubt.
Yep.
But in the SEC, Now, Missouri has their challenges. They get an easy week this week. Georgia gets a virtual bye taken on. Wrong sport. The UMass Minutemen going up against the Georgia Bulldogs. If it's basketball, hey, anybody's game.
Hey, man. The house Marcus can be built, right?
Georgia is going to pummel them. This is a get-right game for Georgia. Not that they really need it, but they'll run it up to like 50 against these guys. They could play their backups and win.
Yeah.
That's Saturday morning. They end the season against Georgia Tech.
If you look at how Georgia has played against what we expect to be playoff teams and teams already ranked in the top 10, I'm sorry, they've been the best team in the country. They have been the best team in the country, because I can circle one game to prove it, and that's Texas. They dominated Texas at home for Texas in Austin. Texas is a loaded roster. They have more talent at quarterback than anyone else in the country. They're good at, or I would say, scratch that. They're great at every key position, and deep at every key position. There's a reason they're ranked third in the country. Like, Georgia, and I said this before the season started, I still like them to win the Natty. I do. Because the reason is, it's what showed up in this game. You've got a lot of first year at the program quarterbacks in these top teams. Georgia is one of the only ones with a homegrown, I recruited him quarterback. You know the other school? Ole Miss. Right. So you see the one they lost to, and it's not an aberration. I think it matters. I think it matters. Now, we also saw, Nussmeier, who has struggled for LSU, in the same boat. But again, he's still young and has a senior season next year. Look out for LSU next year for the same reason.
He doesn't leave. He's being projected as, second round draft pick, maybe late first.
But if I'm him, I want to be a top 5 draft pick. You know what I mean? And I think he's got a roster and especially receiver room that's young and capable of getting him there next year. But again, I just like Georgia a lot. They're a lot like Texas, where they're talented at all the right positions. They were young on defense coming to this year. It's the one question, especially in the front 7, that I had, but they've matured in that front. And they're just incredibly hard to beat. And Smart has been, he's outcoached everyone over the last few years. I mean, you look at some of the giants he's slayed, Saban, Dabo, you know what I mean? The list goes on. And he's really, beat a lot of these huge coaches, and he's not wrong. The SEC is a gauntlet. I mean, the Big Ten is starting to see that a little bit. You see look at what Oregon struggled with this week with Wisconsin. Some of those, and I said this before the season started too, some of those traditional Big Ten type teams, Wisconsin, Iowa, that run the ball and don't give up a lot on defense, that's not the style of play they're used to in the Pacific, conference there. Yeah. So good win by Oregon, but it's the same kind of thing. Their Big Ten starting to see it, but the SEC has always been, and is definitely now with the addition of Texas, Oklahoma, and you know what I mean. And as they continue to grow, I would assume they gobble up a couple of the Florida schools, maybe Clemson as the years go on. It's just going to get tougher. You know what I mean? But yeah, and they're in a great spot. They play UMass next week and then finish with Georgia Tech, a rivalry game, but one they should easily win.
Yeah, they're going to be in a great position. Well, let's wrap it up here for Sports Wrap on the FiredUP Network. Watching us on sports.tv, on TrueTVPlus, or like we just said, on Watchi. Here's what Watchi.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Ty Valkyrie La Huera Loca, and you are watching Wrestling Spotlight.
Got the championship belt. Alex, who's your champion of the week?
Yeah, I'm going to go right where in the same area I was just talking, man. Kirby Smart's my champion of the week, specifically because he was the one that told us all, don't give up on this team. And, clearly they're not ready to quit.
Well, and I'm going to go with the University of Indiana Hoosiers football team. The first time in a long time that Indiana is in a position to have the game of the week. They are playing the Ohio State University Buckeyes coming up this Saturday. It's the big noon kickoff on Fox. Another game that the whole country is going to be saying, why in the world isn't this on primetime? Well, it's because Fox picks the game and they want noon to be their big time slot game. The Ohio State against Indiana. Ohio State's number 2. Indiana's number 5. Indiana wins that. They got to go up to number 2, maybe number 1. Ohio State wins. Play the course out. You're cruising again.
Yeah, I would assume they go to number 2.
Big week.
I would assume they go to number 2, but where
Oregon wins.
But where it matters more, in my opinion, is in the Big 12 and the Big 10 standings. That's where it matters more, because just like the SEC, there's a bit of a logjam of one loss and undefeated teams. And if Indiana, who by the way wins all of the other key markers, if you get into these tiebreakers, that's the thing for Indiana. So right now, Penn State's 9-1, Ohio State's 9-1. Indiana would, if they go to 11-0 and Oregon's 11-0, even if, heaven forbid they drop the last game, like, which they won't, they're going to be in the Big Ten championship. They've cemented themselves in the Big Ten championship. And even if they do drop the last, they have all of the tiebreakers against all of the rest of the cream of the crop in the Big Ten, which, they're just in a great spot. They're going to get a chance to play against Oregon at the end of the year. So they've got 2 of their next 4 games between Ohio State and then Oregon are just incredibly tough and will be the benchmark for this season.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that coming up on College Gridiron if you stay tuned to the FiredUP Network. With that, for Sports Wrap, Gerald Bentley, Alex Campbell, we'll see you later.